So, today I want to talk about the Democratic Party and climate nominees. The Biden administration that's coming into the White House has put forward a number of very interesting people and a very mixed group of people towards their policy on climate change. And hopefully, with a lot of the promises that Biden had made, there will be a movement forward in terms of climate change to reduce emissions and fix a lot of the problems. So I wanted to go over all of the nominees and just kind of give a brief overview of what we can expect over the next 4 years from the Biden administration. So the two that I want to focus most on before I get done with all this is Congresswoman Haaland and Michael Regan. These two are standouts from the rest of the group. I'm going to address all of the other ones first before I get to those two, because those two require a lot more to look at as how important and good of a decision they are. I'm going to start from the bottom here. Ali Zaidi. He is actually a lawyer who actually worked for a law firm that was tied to Fortune 100 companies. It's the usual ties to democratic business institutions, and I don't expect much from him. Brenda Mallory is actually more on the opposite side of the legal struggle, where she seems to have taken a lot of positions to protect the environment in her legal positionings. So she could be an interesting candidate for where she's at as chair of the Council of Environmental Quality. Gina McCarthy, as National Climate Advisor, is the former head of the EPA under the Obama administration, and all three of these people are, hearkening back to a lot of the Obama administration. The three newer people involved in all of this is these particular three. And speaking to Jennifer Granholm, Governor Granholm is one that bothers me immensely. As Secretary of Energy, she kind of has this mixed bag coming in, where she has put forward a lot of policies towards zero emissions and switching over to electric cars and all of these things, and has actually worked for companies that produce electric cars and the charging stations that they are tied to. And her whole policy is about making jobs in green energy in the United States. And so on that side, she's good. But she's also hearkening to a very corporate-backed perspective. Because in 2003, she was tied to Dow Chemical for her political financial organizing. And when she left the position of governor in 2011, she actually worked for Dow Chemical on their board and has worked for some institutions that are tied to banking in the past. She is not someone that I generally would trust to have the best interest of the country, and again speaks to that very center-right Democrat position where they're going to back corporations and they're tied to these positions, even if her policies sound really great on the surface. But getting to the two really surprising candidates, you have Congresswoman Deb Haaland, who was a co-sponsor on AOC's Green New Deal legislation, and has been a major proponent against fracking. She has been anti-fracking for years, to the point where she's kind of hated for it by a lot of the companies who want that particular policy in her home state of New Mexico. She actually says, "I come from New Mexico. It's a big gas and oil state, and I care about every single job. We don't want to go back to normal, right? We don't want to go back to where we were because that economy wasn't working for a lot of people." On top of that, she is actually an Indigenous woman, so who has also come out in defense of Native lands against the Dakota Pipeline. This is someone who has very, very much taken the perspective and hopefully will enforce and push the Biden administration into positions of respecting Indigenous lands, making good use of federal lands as Secretary of the Interior, and speak out against any sort of use of fracking in the country. and hopefully work with the Secretary of Energy to push away from corporatism in a direction that would allow for policies that would allow the country to go in a green direction without relying on so much corporate backing. One can hope, right? Like, this is actually a very hopeful pick. Some of her other notable positions is that she has taken a perspective of the 30-30 effort in the House, which is a conservation plan to protect 30% of the land and ocean in the US by 2030. She has put forward the Antiquities Act, which would greatly expand national monuments of great ecological and cultural value. These are all really good positions. And one thing I need to note is when she showed up at the Dakota pipeline protests, from what I understand, she actually showed up with food. And like, I kind of find that a really wholesome practice of trying to communally work together in a way to protect land in this country, and especially indigenous land, which has often come under attack by the US government throughout its history. The other name on that list is Michael Regan. He was actually picked over some very, very, very corporate-backed people to be the head of the Environmental Protection Agency. Michael Regan, from what I've been able to find, has actually, while head of the North Carolina Environmental Office, he actually forged a tough multi-billion-dollar settlement over coal ash cleanup with Duke Energy. Not like a small amount here. We're talking a multi-billion-dollar effort to actually clean up the coal ash. And coal ash is really dangerous. Like, it has a lot of dangerous properties, including having, I believe, arsenic in it. And when inhaled, can cause major issues in terms of breathing and causing asthma. So this is a great work. He's worked with Republican legislature before, so he knows how to push policies through against them, and work with them in terms of that. You know, unfortunately, we need to work with Republicans, and that's going to be an important part of the policy. He even says, growing up with asthma in eastern North Carolina, that he had to deal with toxic pollution, agricultural waste, and environmental destruction is being concentrated in communities of color and low-income communities. So you have a person of color who's dealt with these issues and is now in a position of power to try to work against it. Furthermore, he has worked against the chemical company Chemours to virtually eliminate polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFASs, a group of man-made chemicals that they were fearful would seep into the Cape Fear River. And these chemicals are used in cookware, stain repellents, and other products, and have been linked to, dangerous health effects, such as low infant birth weights and immune system problems and thyroid damage and cancer. So this is someone who's actively worked against these companies in order to promote the health and safety of people. So I believe that these two are really good choices. And, the funny thing is, especially in Deb Haaland's case, she's someone who's had to speak out against a lot of companies who want to use the commons. And if you've heard me talk about the commons on this channel, the commons are always a good thing when major corporations want to use the federal land, for example, for their own purposes for financial gain, but they're always bad when they're going to be used by lower class people to generally keep them as commons. These type of communal lands are important, and they should be maintained for the betterment of the entire society and not for single corporations to be able to come in and overwhelmingly just abuse the land. And having these two champions that seem to be speaking out against corporate use of land is really important. And I hope this speaks a lot louder than the choice of Jennifer Granholm as Secretary of Energy in the direction of moving the country in a more environmental direction. So at the very least, with these picks, you have a harken back to Obama administration era, with some corporate backing involved. But on the best side of things, you actually have some real environmental change potentially happening, moving in the direction of protecting land and speaking out against corporations and corporate greed. So we can hope that the Biden administration is moving in that direction. Even if they fail on a lot of other policies across the board, and we don't get a lot of the things that we're looking for, especially for someone as leftist and I think radical as I am to want to, move towards anarchy, these are small, gradual changes that hopefully will lead to more awareness and a better environmental situation in a number of years. The one thing I do want to call out, though, specifically about the Democratic Party right now, is the Democratic Party might have put forward a lot of good candidates in terms of, Secretary of Interior and head of the EPA, but they are sadly lacking in the legislative area. And this is something we need to talk about. AOC was actually was co-chair of a panel that advised Joe Biden on climate policy. However, she just lost the ability to be on the Energy and Commerce panel to a fellow New York Democrat. What was her name? Kathleen Rice, who was from Nassau County. She lost in a lopsided vote of 46-13 to Rice for the one position that was available for a New York member of the House of Representatives. And the reason for this is that a lot of senior Democrats actually felt that progressives like AOC and their movement towards the Green New Deal and Medicare for All would actually limit Congress's ability to draft bipartisan health and climate policies over the next years. And so I think this speaks volumes to the level of mediocrity that we're still seeing from the Democratic Party. There are a few key positions that have been put in place that speak in a very promising way. But will the Democratic Party actually put forward any proper legislation? Probably not. And putting AOC, the leader of the Green New Deal, on the back burner, while putting the co-sponsor in this other position and taking her out of the House, actually speaks to a lot of the deficits that the Democratic Party has been putting out there. Especially the fact that they don't really want to put out a lot of these legislative procedures. They're more worried about working with Republicans and trying to get, fair legislation out when they control the House. And if Georgia goes well, they might control the Senate. And Georgia's looking relatively promising, actually, as of late. So they could really push forward a lot of policy changes, and they're afraid to. They are afraid to move past the center-right position, especially in terms of legislature. So yes, the Biden administration's staff looks great. There's a lot of good potential change there, but in terms of legislature, they are still afraid of progressives. They are still afraid of moving forward in this direction. And one of the things that we're going to need to look to over the next 2 to 4 years, if we want to make any actual change in this country, is primarying these moderate to conservative Democrats and start pushing in progressive people. Start making it so that AOC isn't getting completely ratioed down in a 46-13 vote. Pelosi could have put her on the slate and put her in and thrown her in and backed her, but she didn't. Pelosi is not going to back these progressives. We need to start shifting people like Pelosi out. We need to start shifting in a more progressive direction if we're going to create any real change in this country. So yeah, look forward to the new Biden administration, but keep pushing. And push in realistic ways. We're not going to be able to vote for the new Green Deal and Medicare for All anytime soon. That's not going to change things. But call into account the people who are not in positions where they want to back up what the overwhelming majority of Americans want. Because even a good number of Republicans are starting to push in the direction of some form of Medicare for All and the Green New Deal. With that said, if you like this video, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button and the bell for notifications. You can follow me on Twitter and check out my Discord in the description down below. And with that said, my name is Anarchist Tara, and I hope you enjoyed watching.